This is the place where at least 3 times in the last 70 years, the country of Poland, the church, and the world have been consecrated to Jesus through Mary. So it was done in 1946, I think 76, and then in 79 in a particular way. Father mentioned that Pope John Paul II did it when he came here in June of 1979. So many of us might remember those days. There were 9 days that are considered to be days that changed the world. He was here June 4th, I think it was, 1979. He did a prayer of consecration and he gave a homily. At the end of the homily, he said something that is just so striking to me. So if you know John Paul, and we're going to continue to get to know him better over these next couple of days, perhaps especially those of us who are younger who don't really know who this Pope was from so long ago. John Paul loses his mother, his father, and his brother. As a young man, he's totally alone. Not too far from this place, and on our way to Zakopane, there's a Polish shrine called Kalwaria with massive monuments to all the holy sites in the Holy Land. And John Paul would go there often. And there was a particular chapel there with an image of Our Lady, and it was there shortly after his mother had passed away that he was praying. And he felt like Our Lady just said to him, "I will be your mother from now on." And that became really the beginning of his motto, which you'll see everywhere in Poland still, even though he's not still Pope. They still think he's Pope. Which is totus tuus, I am entirely yours, which is not to Jesus, it's to Mary. So when he was here, he gave this incredible reflection where he talked about how freedom, paradoxically, is not free. Because the purpose of freedom is to love, and love is not free. Love gives itself entirely away to the beloved, and once you've done that, you're not free anymore. That's the paradox. The purpose of freedom is to love. Once you've loved, once you've chosen the object of your love, you surrender yourself to that person. Then he ended his homily by saying these words. He says, "I am a man of great trust," which are rather shocking words. So Jean Paul's a contemporary of Jean-Paul Sartre, who, if you know anything about 20th century, and Jean-Paul Sartre is kind of a leader in the existentialist movement, who's a renowned atheist. They lived through the same times, the same disasters. Sartre's conclusion is everything is absurd, there is no God. John Paul loses his mother, his father, his brother, endures Nazi Germany's Soviet occupation, and he says, "I am a man of great trust." And then he ends by saying, "And I learnt to be so here." In front of her. So much like Father Steve, it's a great word, brother, where are you? About just not hiding our wounds. That's really important. Jesus doesn't hide his wounds. He still has his wounds. Our Lady still has her wounds. In heaven, we will have our wounds. It makes us approachable, right? But I just really feel as well like there's a strong exhortation. We mentioned it yesterday with Maximilian Kolbe, and again today, to really consider just entrusting ourselves to Mary. Nobody can teach us how to trust like Mary. Mary's life, just like Father said about the humanity of her depiction in the icon, Mary's life is one of constant tragedy. If anybody deserved an easy life, it's Mary, right? Gabriel comes, bear a son, his kingdom will have no end. She's got to be thinking, sweet, people are going to come to me. This is going to be a great gig, right? Instead, what happens? You know, she hears this message about how this child's going to come. She's going to conceive by the power of the Holy Spirit. This is a married woman, right? To a real man who's not a statue, right? Joseph's a real man. And she has to trust somehow Joseph's going to believe her. Get a hold of this, men. When she says, "I'm pregnant, don't worry, it's from God." That was a real conversation. These are real people. She had to trust that somehow God would make Joseph aware of what it was that had happened. She has to trust when they have to move to Egypt and they don't have any connections there. When they have to flee from Herod, who's killing children because he hears about the infant Jesus and the Messiah. She has to trust as her son grows up in her house and does nothing for all those years. Right? You think, my son's going to be the Messiah, the anointed one. What's he doing? He's making tables. Nice table, son. When are you going to go Messiah or whatever, like, aren't you supposed to be doing something more? She has to trust when he leaves home. Begins his mission, she has to trust when he's experiencing the rejection of his family. You think you have a difficult family? The Holy Family is not Jesus, Joseph, and Mary in this idyllic little home, right? The scriptures tell us, especially the Gospel of John and the Gospel of Mark, tells us Jesus' brothers and sisters, whoever they are, whether they're Joseph kids from an earlier marriage or their cousins, whatever they are, they think he's nuts. All right? So Jesus' family thinks he's nuts. Don't be surprised if yours does, right? Or if mine does. He had no sin. I have lots of sin. So do you. She has to trust when he's rejected by the people. She has to trust when she sees him being scourged. She has to trust when Pilate brings him out, crowned in thorns, wearing his own blood. Imagine Mary looking at Jesus, wrapped in a purple cloak. He's not streaked with blood, right? He's immersed in blood, mocked with a crown. Surely she thought of Gabriel's words. He will be great, and of his kingdom there will be no end. She has to trust that somehow that wasn't a hallucination. She has to trust when she's silent at the foot of the cross and her son is dying and dripping his blood on her. She has to trust when they put him in a grave. Her whole life is one of trust. Anybody here battling issues with trust? So much like John Paul said, I'm a man of great trust. I learned to be so here. Whatever it is that you and I are wrestling with, let's just ask her to intercede for us in a really powerful way for our kids, for whatever the situations are in our lives. Confident that she can do in us what it is that she did in him.